Hello everyone, welcome back to another lecture of F1 Business Technology here at KnS. I am your tutor Sir Asim Iqbal, and today we'll be starting with the third chapter of our syllabus, the macroeconomic environment. Okay, I believe you guys have revised the previous two chapters because all the steps you guys will need to follow in order to remember all of the content that you have studied so far. Okay, so regular revision is of the utmost importance. All right, so without further ado, let's get started with this chapter, starting with the definition of what macroeconomics really is. Now, the macroeconomic policy is a countrywide policy, it's a nationwide policy implemented by the government, all right? And it tackles issues like economic growth, inflation, employment, and your overall trade. Okay, now here you can see two diagrams which shows the circular flow of income, like where the money comes from and where the money is taken away in an economy, right? First, take a look at the diagram on the left, the circular diagram. Over here we can see that how on a smaller scale, like just on the level of businesses and individuals, money comes and money goes, right? Over here, let's take a look. That if you see on the top, factor incomes paid by firms and expenditure on goods and services, right? Let's take a look at the households first. In the case of households, what's happening is households is the average consumer, right? The people who want to buy the goods and services. So what they do is they spend their money on goods and services. That money goes to the firms, right? And in turn, what the firms do is they pay the wages of all the people who work there, right? And this circle goes on and on and on, okay? Now, this is a very small example of a very micro level of how money comes and money goes, okay? But on the right, you will see a much larger, much more complex diagram, but it's not that difficult, okay? Over here, it shows basically the same concept, but with many other factors involved. Over here, we have two extra things. If you look at the bottom of this diagram, you can see the term withdrawals and injections, right? Withdrawals is all the money taken away from the economy, and injections are all the money that is put into the economy, right? Now, let's see what are the withdrawals and what are the injections. First of all, we see the same thing that's happening in the first diagram over here, right? We see that the firms are giving income to the households, and households are spending that money on the goods and services being offered by the firm, right? Same thing. But it's not as simple as that, is it? I mean, just think about it. There are people, there are sectors, there are organizations which are managing your money or which decide where your money comes and money goes. For example, if people say, hey, listen, you know what? We need to save up for the future, okay? We should save up the money, not spend it, right? So if people start saving money rather than spending it, that's going to be a withdrawal, okay? Because there's less money circulating in the system now, okay? If people save their money rather than spending it, if less households give money to the firms, then in turn there will be lesser incomes, right? So it will result in a withdrawal of money. Similarly, if the government imposes more taxes on the people, it takes away more money from the people, that's again a withdrawal of money from the economy, okay? And if people decide to import more goods, right? Like they're spending more on high quality imports or more expensive imports, that's more money being taken out of your economy, right? Whereas, if people say, hey, listen, I've got a better idea. Instead of saving the money, why don't we invest that money, right? In maybe like mutual funds, or maybe in some real estate, in crypto, right? In foreign exchange. on the stock market, whatever you wish. Okay, so if people invest that money is going to increase, right? So when that money increases, it's going to be more money pumped into the economy. That's going to be more money injected into the economy, right? Furthermore, government spending means the government invests, the government spends on the public, right? It improves the roads, the communications, the healthcare, the defense sector. It cuts down on social costs. It protects the environment. So all of these facilities being provided by the government is going to increase the productivity of the people, right? And when the productivity of the people increases, so obviously they'll be more motivated, they'll be more efficient, and hence they will be generating more value and more money for the economy, right? Good so far? Good. And then we have exports, okay? There's going to be a topic called the balance of payments and economic growth, which we'll come to later on, but I'll just tell you what exports are all the goods that you sell, all the goods that your country sells, right? So if you're selling more goods, right? If you're selling more goods and more money comes into your economy, that's an injection, that's more money coming into your economy, right? As opposed to imports where you're paying for the goods, right? So I hope this diagram is clear. Let's move on. Okay, now we have some elements which affect the economy. First one we have is the multiplier effect, okay? Or the snowball effect, as we call it. Now, what is a multiplier effect? You see, it's I think the best way to describe it, guys, is going to be like a chain reaction, right? Something that sets up the base for other things to happen, right? Like, okay, this is going to sound a bit weird, but just imagine, like you might have seen in the movie or the games, like when people do time travel, right? In time travel, what they do is they go back in time, right? They do something, maybe they kill someone or they save someone's life, and when they return to the present, things are drastically changed, right? Things are very drastically changed. This is because one change, right? One change can have many results on and on and on. Okay, it can impact many things, and those things can impact other things, right? Over here, in the terms of an economy, or let's take the example of a business, what's going to happen? Like, let's say, a business decides to shut down. That's an event, it's happening, right? A business decides to shut down. Now, if a business shuts down, what's going to happen? The people are going to be unemployed. Okay, the business shuts down. That's the main event, right? What happens next? The multiplier effect. What's going to happen? The people are going to be unemployed. If people are unemployed, the government is going to provide more unemployment benefits. Okay, means the government has less money to spend. If government has less money to spend, it will need more money by increasing taxes. Okay, if they increase taxes, people are going to become more poor, right? Because now they have to pay more taxes. And when people become poor, what's going to happen is those poor people and those unemployed people might resort to crime, right? So now you see is how one activity can have a tumble effect or a snowball effect leading to more and more problems, right? So this is what we call a multiplier effect, right? I hope that's clear. Let's move on. Then we have the aggregate demand, right? The aggregate demand is your overall demand in the economy. What and how much your people want. What and how much of it do the people want in your current economy, in your country, right? That is called the aggregate demand. And everything else that you can produce, all the things, in all the quantities that you can sell, that you can produce, that you can manufacture, that's called your aggregate supply. But let's take a look at aggregate demand first. Here is the diagram. Okay, now take a look at this diagram a bit carefully, okay? Oh, you have the price on the y-axis and you have the national income on the x-axis, right? national income can be said it's similar to economic growth, it's similar to aggregate supply, right? So on the y-axis you have price, and on the x-axis you have national income. Okay, whenever your demand matches supply, that's called equilibrium. Okay, like over here, over here, over here, and over here, right? On the 4 points where AS is matching AD, that's where the equilibrium will be. Okay, now equilibrium means demand is satisfying supply and supply is satisfying demand. Okay, and there are various rules when it comes to supply and demand, but that's a topic for another day. It's not really a part of your syllabus. I'm just giving you like an overview of the whole concept, right? Now, when demand changes, right? When demand changes, it shifts. It shifts either upwards or downwards, or I would say it either shifts left or right. Same goes with supply. When supply increases or decreases, it shifts right or left respectively. Same goes with demand. Okay? All right, let's move on. Aggregate supply, I believe we've already discussed this. Okay? It's the opposite of demand. Like all of the things that you are able, that your government and your country is able of producing, that's called aggregate supply. Let's give it a quick read and then we can move forward. The aggregate supply refers to the ability of the economy to produce goods and services. Yes, we know that. Aggregate supply is positively related to the price level, means as the price rises, it is an incentive for the suppliers to produce more so they can sell them at a higher price. This is because a price rise will make more profitable sales and encourage organizations to increase their output. The aggregate supply curve slopes upwards from left to right and does not shift in the short term as shown in the figure above. Now, what does this mean? That supply does not change in the short term. Consider a small business. Okay, consider a small business. Now, a small business, they're gonna have probably a handful of employees at best, some very simple equipment, and it's going to take them a lot of time to build up and to compete and to branch out. Okay, or to have franchises maybe. So what's going to happen here? In the short term, the business will not be able to expand. The business will not be able to increase its supply drastically, right? Like maybe after a couple of years, it may be in a position, but in the initial years of the new business, it's just going to be struggling to survive. Okay, so it's not able to increase its supply in the short term. All right. Where the aggregate demand curve intersects with the aggregate supply curve, the total demand for the goods and services in the economy is equal to the total supply of goods and services in the economy. This is known as equilibrium level of national income, right? We just discussed this a couple of minutes ago. I hope that's clear. If you have any questions, guys, please feel free to ask, okay? All right, let's move ahead. Then we have the definition of national income and aggregate demand and supply. Let's take a look. Equilibrium national income is determined using aggregate supply and demand analysis. Yes, we saw that in the previous diagram right over here, right? Whenever AS and AD meet, that's going to create the equilibrium level of national income, okay? All right, let's move ahead. And aggregate demand and supply, we have already covered. Let's move ahead. Inflation. Now, I believe you're all familiar with what inflation is, and I'm pretty sure that you may have complained about it as well some point in your lives, right? Inflation, in short, guys, is the rising prices, right? Whenever prices increase, we say, we are facing so much inflation, the politicians are going on about it, the media is going on about it, it's being discussed on podcasts. So many people are talking about inflation. But what exactly is inflation, right? And what forms of inflation are there? Let's take a look. in a situation where resources are fully employed, there may be an inflationary gap since increase in demand will cause price changes, but no variations in real output. Meaning, guys, whenever there's a shortage, okay, whenever people who want to buy are many, but the available goods are less, so then it starts a bidding war, so to speak, like an indirect bidding war. So in the case of an indirect bidding war, what happens is that the businesses are forced to raise their prices. Okay, so only the people who can afford it are able to buy it. Okay, whenever there's a shortage of goods, usually what happens is the prices increase. Okay, and that's why you see so many people, they're saying that, things have become so expensive and, all of that. But, there is a very interesting concept regarding supply. Okay, but again, this is a quite tested theory. If you want to learn more about it, what's going to happen is I would recommend that there's a movie called Blood Diamond by perhaps one of your favorite actors, Leonardo DiCaprio. Okay, it's a bit of an old movie in the early 2000s, I guess, but it's a very good movie. Okay, this show is that how diamonds are mined and how diamonds are expensive. Okay, what that movie really shows is that, all the diamonds, they're basically mined in African countries like Sierra Leone and Nigeria and all of these, South Africa, for example, right? So what happens is that these diamonds are actually abundant in quantity. Okay, they're widely available everywhere. But what certain companies do, all these mining companies of diamonds, what they do is they create an artificial shortage. I mean, they have all the diamonds stored in the back, right? They have all of these warehouses and safes where they store all the diamonds in bulk quantity. But they only showcase very few diamonds in front of you. And they say, hey, listen, these diamonds are very rare. They're very precious. So few diamonds left in the world. And, if you buy a diamond, it's a symbol of eternal love and, it's swag, as you can say. So they create an artificial inflation. Okay, they will give you the illusion of shortage, and that illusion of shortage will create an artificial inflation. Okay, so that can be one of your assignments, to watch the Blood Diamond movie, right? And then you will understand how this whole game is played out. Okay, so but in reality, what happens is that in terms of other goods, when there is a shortage, so in case of a shortage, the prices of the goods will rise in order to accommodate the highest bidders only. Okay, all right. Then we have a deflationary gap. A deflationary gap can be described as the extent to which the aggregate demand function will have to shift upwards to produce the full employment level of national income. Now, a deflationary gap, what it means is, like, for example, your prices are rising by 7% every year. Okay, the prices are rising by 7% every year. Like, let's say in 2020 it was 7%, in 2021 it was 7%, in 2022 it was 7%. Okay, in 2023, if it becomes maybe 9%, so that means that you have an inflationary gap. Okay, you have an inflationary gap. The inflation is actually increasing. Okay, the rate of inflation is increasing. But let's say 2022, 7%, 2021, 7%, 2022, 7%, 2023, 4%. Okay, now the prices are not actually going down. The prices are not actually going down, but the rate, the percentage by which it is increasing, that percentage has decreased. Okay, first the prices were rising by 7%, now they're rising by just 4%. Okay, that is called a deflationary gap. And then we have stagflation. Stagflation is a very, very problematic situation. That is when there is a high unemployment combined with high inflation. Okay, now if you want to look at an example of this, you can take a look at Zimbabwe. Okay, Zimbabwe has, like, unbelievably high inflation and unbelievably high unemployment. Okay, and I believe Argentina is also going in the same direction, right? Because there is a lot of inflation in Argentina as well. And there is another country, I believe it's called Lebanon or Libya, I think, where they have replaced much of their own currency with the US dollar, okay, just to tackle the inflation problems. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Let's move on. The business cycle. Now, this is a very interesting cycle of the different economic moods or the different economic phases a business goes through, right? Depending on where the economy is right now. Now, there are 4 moods or 4 phases of a business cycle, as can be seen in this diagram, okay? But what do these points represent? Point A, point B, point C, point D. Now, what do they actually mean? Let me tell you guys, these are: A is recession, C is recovery, B is depression, and D is boom. Okay. Now, what's going on over here? Point A, or rather, okay, point A. Point A is when, your economy is slowing down. It's starting to slow down, right? Like, people start to get unemployed. Inflation starts to rise, okay? And demand eventually starts to decline, okay? It's not very less. Inflation is not too high, but things are starting to go in that direction. That's point A. That's called a recession, okay? Point B. Point B is called a depression or also a slump. Okay, and point B is a depression, which is a very advanced form of recession. Over here, unemployment hit record lows. There's a high inflation. Okay, there is very less demand. People are not able to buy. People are not able to invest. They have very less disposable income. They're just trying to survive. Okay. In C, it's a recovery phase. Means things are starting to look up. Like once you've hit rock bottom at point B, and then when you start to rise, things start to look better. People are like, they're starting to get their jobs back. Incomes are rising. Gradually, demand is rising. So that means that there are people that, it's getting back up on its feet. And when the economy gets back on its feet and starts running, many people are employed now. They've got, like, all of them have got their jobs back. The government is getting more taxes. The businesses are supplying a lot of goods and services, right? And they're easily affordable. People are buying, they're selling, they're enjoying their lives. That's called the economic boom at point D. Okay, I hope that's clear. Inflation is something that we have just discussed, but the problems of inflation, guys, like, we often look at things that, things just become more expensive. Okay, that's just one problem of inflation. However, there are several. Just take a look at these. When you have inflation, the money starts to lose its value, right? Like, for example, $100, right? Like maybe 3 years ago, 5 years ago, you were able to buy, let's say, 10 things with $100 bill, right? But now, 5 years later, you are not able to buy those 5 things with $100, those 10 things with $100, right? You are able to buy maybe 5 or 6 of them, okay? So the dollar bill remains the same, but its value has decreased, right? So that's what inflation does. It reduces the value of your money. The exports become more expensive and imports become cheaper, okay? Now, since you are selling those goods, okay, it's going to be more expensive for you to sell those goods and more cheaper for you to import, right? Because if there's inflation, if the things being produced in your country are much more expensive, you will prefer to buy cheaper imports, cheaper imported goods, and people outside your country will say, hey, listen, we're not going to buy from you anymore. You're selling it to us at a way high price. So your exports are going to fall, right? Future uncertainty makes decision making difficult. Now, since you are having a lot of inflation, you don't know whether to spend the money right now, or to save up, or to invest, which direction the economy is going to go in, whether it's going to a boom or a recession. So this creates a lot of uncertainty of what to do with your money. More time spent on adjusting prices for the government. If there is high inflation, the government will be most focused on stabilizing prices, but oftentimes it's unsuccessful. Okay, because prices are subject to market conditions. And obviously, if there is high level of inflation, it's going to have a detrimental effect on the economy and on your investments, right? Because again, related to the first point, whatever savings you have, whatever interest rates you're getting, or whatever the returns on your investments you're getting, the value of your money is falling. Okay, so any returns on investments that you might be getting, it's not going to be as good as it should be, right? Okay. Consumer price index. Now, this is a very interesting concept. It's very closely linked with inflation. What is it? Consumer price index. A very interesting concept which is closely linked with inflation. It's like, a basket of goods. Okay? You gather a basket of goods and you say, all of these goods are being used by a common household. Like you have your groceries, you have your utilities, you have your medicines, right? You have your rent, your accommodations, right? Your transport. All of these goods and services you put into a basket, and that basket is called the consumer price index, right? And the consumer price index measures that how much importance and how much spending you are doing on each and every one of those goods and services individually as a household, okay? And how much their prices are increasing year by year. Let's give it a quick read. A consumer price index, or CPI, is based on a chosen basket of items which consumers purchase. A weighting or importance is decided for each item according to the average spending by the consumers. Okay? CPI may be used for several purposes as an indicator of inflationary pressures, how much the prices of those goods are rising in the basket, as a benchmark for wage negotiations, and to determine annual increase in government benefits. Now, if we know that the goods and services we buy, the consumers buy on a very regular basis, how much their prices are going to increase. If we know that, right, if the CPI helps us identify that, so we can negotiate with our employers that, hey, listen, things are gonna be more expensive. I need at least this much increase in my salary so I can meet my daily expenditures, okay? Then similarly, guys, we have our retail price index, or the RPIs. Now, RPIs are a bit different. RPI, what it does is, like every individual is different, right? Every household might be different, but there are certain combinations of goods and services which apply to everyone. Like everybody's gonna spend on utilities. Everybody's gonna spend money on, food and, groceries and transport. Almost everybody needs those things. So what RPI does is it considers the majority of the households, right? It takes into account the majority of the households and then applies the same concept of CPI on them. Okay, whereas CPI, what it does is CPI takes an average household and other types of people, like it takes into account someone who are single parents or a joint family system, people who live alone, for example, right? So CPI considers all of them, but RPI considers the vast majority of people, okay, because they matter or they contribute the most to the economy, okay, spending wise, okay. And when you exclude mortgage payments from RPI, that becomes the underlying rate of inflation. Not an important concept, but just something to add on to RPI. Okay, let's move on. The causes of inflation. Now, what exactly causes inflation? What is the root cause? we have these 5 problems which result in inflation. First off, we have demand pull inflation. You know, the basic economic problem: limited resources, infinite wants, right? So as more and more people demand more and more goods and services, that demand, that excess demand, that greed is going to result in inflation. This is an inflation caused by the consumers themselves. Then there is the cost push inflation. When the raw materials become expensive, when you hire skilled laborers and they demand a high salary, they demand a higher wage, right? Or if legal compliances, the overall cost to manufacture, to provide those goods and services, if they become more expensive, then ultimately it's going to result in a higher price and thus more inflation. On the other hand, if you decide that, hey, listen, I'm not satisfied with these local cars, these locally manufactured cars, I'd rather drive an imported car, okay? Or I'd rather, wear imported clothes. So when you import higher or more expensive goods from abroad, again, those higher imports are going to push up your inflation, okay? Again, mostly related to consumers, but also to businesses who have to import their raw materials or equipment from overseas. Even expectation of inflation can create inflation. Like if people think that it's going to be very expensive in the future, inflation is going to rise, there's going to be an inflationary gap, a big inflationary gap, then they'll start to save money, right? They'll start to save money and or they might start to spend all of it at once. Okay, it can go either way. So what they'll do is they'll try to purchase all of those goods right now, which again will result in a higher inflation. And when the government increases the supply of money in the economy, like more money available to everybody take more money, the government becomes Oprah, right? Everybody has money, you have more money, you have more money. So obviously when people have more money, they're gonna spend more, and when they spend more, it's going to push up the inflation. Okay, let's move ahead. Unemployment, a very big social evil, guys. Like we just discussed earlier, that when a business closes and unemployment rises, it can lead to so many problems, right? It can lead to crime, it can lead to social cause, it can lead to families being destroyed, okay? Suicides and so many other evils, okay? And if you're multi-skilled, or if you're lucky, if you have sources, if you have connections, maybe you can get a job. But from personal experience, I can tell you that unemployment, it's really, really bad, right? I personally have been through it, and it was one of my darkest times, but I tried my level best, and all I can say is I would strongly recommend you guys to invest in your skills, okay? Because a degree, even your ACCS certificate, is not a guarantee for a job, okay? Trust me on this, it's not, right? But you have those marketable skills, you know how to do stuff, right? Like just the knowledge you get from the classroom, it's not gonna be enough, okay? You have those skills, like you know how to do your taxes, you know how to do the bookkeeping, you know to finance yourselves, you know how to invest, you know how to financially model or plan out the businesses. Those skills, or even a skill as simple or as in demand like Microsoft Excel or PowerPoint, these skills can really help you in your life as an ACCA professional, okay? Like anybody who's applying to those companies or those audit firms with just an ACCA certificate, and if you're in the same line, there's no difference, okay? But if you have those additional skills on your CV, right? Like Microsoft Excel, Wave, Xero, QuickBooks, these accounting softwares, how to make business plans, how to do financial modeling, for example, or maybe if you know how to do taxes, right? Like you have an interest in tax and you have some prior experience to it as well. You've done internships somewhere. So trust me, guys, your CV will stand out and it will greatly increase your chances of not only employment, but the ability for you to be indispensable to that company, right? So trust me on this, guys. Do not invest each and every ounce of your energy, time, and money into just a qualification. Invest in your skills as well. I'm speaking from personal experience. It's going to help you guys a lot. Okay? So, unemployment. A formula is given. The number of people unemployed divided by the total workforce into 100. You will get a figure that how many percentage of people in a country are unemployed. Now, what causes unemployment and what can relieve a country of unemployment? Let's take a look. We have redundancies. Okay, I believe we discussed that earlier in the last class. When someone voluntarily quits their jobs, when there are massive layoffs, right? Like when a business shuts down, it has to let go of all their employees. And all the school leavers, the high school dropouts, the college dropouts who do not have a job, all of these will contribute to unemployment. But when those unemployed people find jobs, and when those laid off workers are re-employed in a different company, in a different firm, or if they're retrained, and or maybe they start their own business, for example, all these things are going to reduce your unemployment. Okay? Let's move ahead. The consequences of unemployment. Now, I believe we have discussed, and I'm sure that you guys yourselves can, come up with some very drastic examples of unemployment. We've discussed some of them. Let's see if we have missed anything out, okay? Now, the consequences of unemployment. There is loss of output, okay? Less goods will be produced because there are less people making them. There is loss of human capital. I mean, loss of labor, loss of skilled people, right? I've even seen ACCAs, qualified ACCAs, struggling to find good jobs, okay? Maybe they're not aware, maybe they do not know how to market themselves, okay? Maybe they do not have the skills, those practical skills. Maybe they don't know how to ace the interview. Many of these things can contribute to unemployment of a professional, okay? And when those professionals are not employed, they're not contributing, they're just lying idle in unemployment, that's going to create a loss of valuable human capital, right? Increasing inequalities in the distribution of income, meaning the rich will be getting richer and the poor will be getting poorer, okay? And that's going to create an inequality of income, okay? The social cost, like we discussed, we have so much crime, okay? If a person who has to feed his family, he does not have a job, what's he gonna do, right? He's going to steal, and he's probably going to, rob someone or, mug someone or commit a bank robbery because he has to feed his family, right? He has no other option. We have seen so many cases of it. Or, a most drastic and a very sad consequence of unemployment is suicide. We see so many cases once again. Like it's not only just depression, it's unemployment that's also killing people, like literally killing people, okay? And they increase the burden of welfare payments. The more people are unemployed, the more it creates burden on the government to provide unemployment benefits, just so they can make ends meet, right? Let's move ahead. Again, we have some causes of unemployment, or I would say the types of unemployment, okay? That bit of a typo error there, I'm sorry. We have the types of unemployment. Let's take a look at them one by one, all right? First, we have the real wage unemployment, okay? Now, this happens when there are so many people available to work, but there are not enough jobs, okay? A lot of people who want to work, but very few jobs, okay? That is called a real wage unemployment, okay? All right. Now, another cause for this is when trade unions step in, okay? When trade unions step in and they demand that their members be paid a higher wage, the company disagrees and lays off those employees, right? This does happen, right? Especially in blue collar jobs, right? This thing usually happens, like, there are some companies which have a policy that if you belong to a trade union, you cannot work here. because trade unions can become very powerful, and often companies have no choice but to, succumb to their demands, right? But some companies, what they'll do, they'll say, hey, listen, we don't care. We are not able to pay you this much. You can leave. And once that happens, it results in real wage unemployment. Then we have a frictional employment, okay? A frictional employment happens is when you are sort of in between jobs, right? Or I would say you are not aware of your jobs. You're not aware of jobs, you don't know how to market yourself. You are like, just shifting through jobs. Like you work at somewhere for 1 month or 2 months, then you're unemployed for 4 months because you lack skills, you lack the marketability, you lack the presentation, you lack the confidence. All of these result in frictional unemployment. Then we have seasonal unemployment. Seasonal unemployment is when you're employed for a specific period of time, right? Like, okay, in any country where there is like maybe 8 or 9 months of summer, right? So, it's very hot summer. So what happens is people, they'll come into the business of selling ice creams and sodas and ice cream shakes and, refreshments, which cool you down, right? But all of these things will end once winter starts, okay? All of these things will end once winter starts, because 9 months of summer, okay, business is going awesome. Many people are buying those ice creams and shakes and juices. But once it ends, once summer ends, those people might not be buying the ice creams and all those refreshments, right? So a low demand will result in people being laid off, right? So that's called a seasonal unemployment. A structural unemployment means that, there's a very high level of unemployment due to a structural change. Okay, like for example, if a country is shifting its priorities more towards the service sector, right? Like a company which was reliant on, the manufacturing sector, right? They're manufacturing cars and spare parts, and they're manufacturing all of these tools, for example, right? But now they're transitioning towards the service sector. The government and the economy, it is transitioning towards the more profitable, I would say, the tertiary sector, banking and insurance and accounting and lawyer firms and doctors, all that sort of stuff. So the people, many people in the agricultural sector and in the manufacturing sector are going to be unemployed, right? Because of this shift in policies, right? So that's going to cause structural unemployment, and it's often quite serious. Then we have technological unemployment. Now, this is something where we see that people are arguing that AI is going to take our jobs, right? Or there are some new technologies which can replace people. Okay, like we don't see typewriters anymore, right? We have a laptop, we have an iPad, we have cell phones. Okay, like take this for example. Okay, this cell phone, all of the things on the cell phone, like everything that I have on the cell phone right now, if you look back in the 90s, this whole table would be filled with all of those things which now fit in this simple phone, right? So what happens is as technology advances, more and more things, they become redundant. They become, well, I would not say useless, but they become unnecessary, right? I want to listen to music. I don't need it. I don't need an iPod or a stereo. I can use my phone. I want to play games. I don't need a console. I can play on my phone. Okay, if I want to listen to if I want to listen to the radio, I don't need to buy a radio. I can listen to it on my phone, right? I want to take pictures. I don't need a camera. I can take the pictures on my phone, right? So all of these things, all the people who are making the radios and the cameras and the stereos and the iPods, all those people might become unemployed. Why? Because of this, a technological marvel, right? I hope that's clear. Let's move on. Then we have cyclical or demand deficient unemployment, right? A cyclical means the business cycle. As the economy moves into a recession or a depression or a slump, all the people who are currently employed, they might become unemployed, right? As the economy goes into a recession, it goes into a bad phase, a negative phase like a recession or a slump, people will start to become unemployed. So when people become unemployed due to that particular reason, it's called a cyclical unemployment. And when the economy starts to recover and then go to a boom, eventually people will start to get re-employed, they will get their jobs back, and then, things will be all right again. I hope that's good. Okay. Now, what can the government do? Guys, what can the government do to create more jobs and to reduce unemployment in the country? Well, there are several things. I want you guys to take a minute, pause the video, come up with at least 3 things which the government can do in order to create more jobs and to reduce unemployment. Just pause the video and give me 3 examples. I'll wait. Okay, so what are those 3 reasons? Let's see if your reasons make it to the list. Okay, spend more money on jobs, on job creation, meaning, get more people on board, get more businesses into the economy. The more businesses come in, the more people they'll need to work those businesses, right? Encourage growth in the private sector, open up more businesses, right? Encourage people, educate people about opening businesses, help them out so they can hire people in turn, right? Encourage training, offer assistance to employer subsidies, right? Encourage labor mobility, right? Encourage labor mobility, like if the workers, they want to relocate or if they have to relocate in order to, comply with their job requirements, the government can help them out, okay? They can give them, temporary accommodations or some free utilities for the duration of their stay, whatever they need, okay? Abolishing closed shop agreements which restrict certain jobs to trade union members. There are certain jobs or there are certain policies, there are certain firms or companies which say that, hey, listen, we will only hire employees from these particular trade unions. Sometimes the companies and the trade unions, that they are in cohort, right? They have an agreement that we will only hire people from your particular trade union, which closes the opportunities to many other people, right? So the government can step in and abolish this kind of rule or make it illegal, right? Because everybody should have access, as long as they're capable, they are applying on merit, they can do justice to their job, they should be given the opportunity, regardless where they're from. And abolish minimum wage regulations or increase minimum wage, right? Because what firms do is that they exploit people. They will exploit people. Like, how many times you have heard that some people are living on minimum wage, right? The government says the minimum wage is, let's say, for example, $10 an hour. Okay, so what most firms will do is they will pay their workers minimum wage, right? Which obviously is not going to be enough. So once you abolish the minimum wage, or if you set a higher standard, like, hey, listen, no one is able to survive, or people are hardly surviving on $10 an hour, the government is raising the minimum wage to $25 per hour, right? Minimum $25 per hour you have to pay. If you're not paying, the government can take legal action against you, okay? So these are all the things, guys, which the government can intervene in and help out the people by creating jobs and reducing unemployment. So guys, I hope that's clear. And let's keep it till here today, right? Because again, it's a bit of a big chapter, and hopefully we'll be finishing this chapter in our next lesson. But again, guys, I request you invest in your skills, okay? KnS has a very robust skills program, and you can be a part of it. You can ask the administration, they can help you out. We're going to have a very dedicated platform for skill learning as well, right? So I would strongly recommend you guys do check it out, okay? And trust me, it's going to help you out a lot, especially as the ACCA professional, okay? Apart from that, just keep on revising. All the exam focus notes, all of the resources are already provided to you, right? Keep keep revising, keep practicing. If you have any questions, just let me know. And I'll see you guys in the next class, right? Take care. Goodbye.